So I'm Nicola Kastner. I'm the CEO of Event Leaders Exchange, or ELX for short. I have been in this role for 2.5 years now. Previously, I consulted before I came into this, but before that, I was the Global Vice President of Event Marketing Strategy at SAP for 5.5 years. And prior to that, I grew up on the agency side. So I've seen all sides of the industry. And I always say that truly this is the best job that I've ever had. And I think it's because I know how much this community would have meant to me when I was in my role at SAP. So for context, we have 324 members that represent almost 167,000 events annually. And 12.6 billion of spend. So small little numbers, but really that illustrate the influence of this community and the work that they do and the business outcomes that they produce for their organizations. And I always joke that I had to become CEO in order to join. And it's kind of true because it is an invite-only community for those that are in senior event roles, as you know, from large organizations that lead the function. And so after I left SAP, when I finally had time to participate in some of these things as a consultant, they were like, nope, you don't qualify. You cannot be a member. And so here I am a few years later, now running the organization.
Probably the best event organization that I have ever been a part of, which is pretty wonderful.
That.
Certainly a testament to your leadership, but it really is a special place. And the events that I have been able to go to are super meaningful.
I have to say, because, as a leader, I get the visibility, and I'm actually so annoyed at myself at our event last week. I had intended to thank my team individually, and I hadn't scripted that part. I scripted my intro. I became completely emotional, put myself together, and went right back to my script and forgot to say thank you to anybody. So I just have to now I can't make up for it enough. It truly is a team of us. But the beauty of it is we all care so much. We all care the same way. And I think that shows in the experiences that we create.
It absolutely shows, which is, I think, what makes it such a special organization, and definitely tapping into the audience, the members. They drive such a fantastic part of the experience, and that connection on site is so wonderful. You sort of set the stage, and it's a beautiful stage. And then all the interaction with everyone on site really rounds it out. It's a pretty
absolutely
neat
and
thing.
Then 365 days a year too, which I think is what makes us quite different, is that yes, the events are the most visible representation of the community and what we do, but it exists when the events are done, and that's what Slack's for, and the calls and all of those things, because you never know when you're going to need your peers. And sometimes it's in the middle of the night, and because we've got Europeans as well as North American members, you might get an answer if you post a question in the middle of the night, and that's really special and important.
Noticed that there used to be event seasons. The spring was busy, summer not so much, fall was busy, and at least in my job, and I know plenty of other people, there's no longer a lull. It's just busy all year long, and if we're trying to stay at the speed of culture, which never sleeps, which certainly is relevant in my role, having that connection and that community year round becomes all the more important. It's not like people disappear at points in time.
And in fact, I feel like the more senior we become, the more important it becomes, because we're expected to have all the answers, and nobody can have all the answers.
Yeah, that's so cool. So we are here to chat about experience today, which I'm super excited to chat about. But to start, there's a couple just sort of baseline questions just to get things going. And the very first one is, what is an experience to you? And I think the follow-up will be, what is the ELX experience? So let's start real broad, and then we'll kind of narrow it in.
Yeah, and I'm assuming we're putting it in the context of an event experience, right? For me, I think it's a combination of many things, and I don't think it comes down to one. It's a layering of experiences almost make it an experience. So, and it's hard to separate, because I'm just coming off this massive event that we've just run from ELX, to separate my perspective of experience and the ELX experience, because they are 100% the same because I drive our experiences. So I'm going to put it in ELX context if you don't mind.
Perfect.
For me, two things. All I have is trust of my members, and value for time is my most important metric on my survey because time is the one thing I can't give them back. So if someone chooses to invest their time with us, it has to deliver value. And what is value? Value is a lot of different things, and all of these things add into experience. So I make a lot of decisions based on what I'd want. I want people to come to our events, feel like it was that valuable use of their time, but leave different, leave inspired about our industry, leave inspired about things that they can bring to their events, leave with great amount of friends and colleagues and new insights and new learnings, because we get to be a little bit bleeding edge. Sometimes that pays off, sometimes that does not. But I also want to challenge the norms a little bit. So one of the things we did this year at Annual Congress, if you think about every single event that you go to, you go and you check into the hotel, and then you go and you stand in another line and you pick up your registration badge. Why? We've never even thought to challenge those things in the past, but they don't have to be two separate processes. So we merged the process. It was simple. I mean, it wasn't simple. Of course, there were some logistical considerations, but we looked to remove friction and cognitive load in order to help our attendees be present to where they really were. They got a welcome note that told them where we were meeting at what time, whether they needed to bring a notebook, how much time to bring to allow to get to the venue, so we did thinking for them. And so this is a really long-winded way of explaining what I think about as an experience, but it's really truly about layering of elements of an event and interactions and touch points, so that the sum of each of those is so much more massive than each of them individually.
I think that is pretty neat. There's a couple different pieces there, which I think we'll end up unpacking. The friction, we'll get to that, because I think friction in events is a fascinating thing to think about. But the value for time, I think, is something that I harp on constantly with my partners, with my team, of making sure that if people are attending any of our events, from the littlest to the biggest, that the value for time is something that we're very conscious of. And I'm curious what you think about in terms of value of time. How do you intentionally bake that into the programs?
So, I tell every member that it is my most important metric in my post-event survey, and I close my sessions, my keynote, the closing session, with asking the question and ask them to tell us that in the survey. So we have massive survey response rates. I think 85 plus is our standard, which is unheard of in the industry.
Yeah,
and as I alluded to before we started recording, there is no shortage of advice from event professionals at our events. But we think about it from what makes it into the program and what does not. And I'll just give you an example. One of the content sessions we were working on was we actually had our members help us design our next research study, because our research programs are what allow us to take individual insights to turn them into collective insights that you can all learn from one another. And we were going to do one on team compensation. We did senior leaders salary compensation study last year because it didn't exist. And we had been asked by our members to do one for their teams. We'd done one earlier this spring on org design and structure. And through that process, a lot of people shared their org charts with us. And the two were linked intentionally, so I could start to get these insights so we could design the next research study. And it became very, very clear to me that we couldn't do it. There's no universal job architecture. We just don't have meeting planners and meeting coordinators and senior meeting planners. That is not how event functions work. Add in different industries, add in different geographies. It's just kind of chaos, right? So plus we would have been asking for really detailed information for all the roles on a leader's team, and we would have risked very low participation rates. So we thought to ourselves, well, this is for the people, let's make it by the people. And so we designed a session at the event where we taught our members how to think about a research study, because that isn't just what's the report? That's the byproduct at the end. But Chloe walked them all through. Chloe Richardson, our head of content, who is absolutely brilliant, and our MC, but walked them through the process on how to design a research study so they had something that they could take away and take back to their organizations. And that's something really important, because we don't want it just to be talking heads. We want it to be practical, that they can apply. Then we had our members work in tables to design research studies. And then we were going to pick a few and then ultimately have people vote. And I was like, but we can't have people work at a table and then not even give them an opportunity to have their ideas heard. We have to respect the time that somebody's put into it. And so we landed up with this multi-vote process through Menti, and it was really exciting. And then the final 3 came down and did a pitch. And then there was another vote. And so everybody felt that they had a stake in designing what was coming next, but also had a voice to share their ideas as well. So that's just one little example, but we want practical takeaways. We want content that and connections that can't be delivered in Zoom, right? Because if it can be delivered on a Zoom, you shouldn't be in the room, I think, personally.
Yeah, making sure that whatever people are getting, whether it is something they can take back and apply, a relationship, a door that's getting unlocked, can't get it online. It's got to be available in the room. That's it.
And events are having a moment, which is great for us, but that's also, we have to be very careful, because I often talk about the difference between the business of events and the events business. And the events business is what many of us grew up on, right? The logistics, the execution, and those things are critical, but they're not why an event happens. Every event, the business event, is the understanding that every business event should be built to serve a purpose. Also, that not everything is an event. An event isn't a solution to every business problem. That's a hill I'm willing to die on. But at that point, so we've got this moment that's happening for us. Our job at ELX and as a greater community is to learn from each other as well, to say, how do we capitalize on this moment? How do we learn from each other? How do we make sure that these moments are as impactful for our businesses as well?
I think that's very well said. The logistics and the operations, which you're right, a lot of us have come up through that. We know it, we love it, we're really good at it. They've become table stakes. The expectation now is that all of those operate flawlessly, but it is the strategic value. It is the bringing of people together. And you're right, this AI moment that we are all in has only reinforced the fact that in-person connection is all the more valuable, and that opportunity to drive trust, move businesses forward. On our team, we've really put a line in the sand that partnership, in-person partnership, is what is going to move our business and any of our partner businesses forward, which is great for us, but it does mean there's a lot of spotlights on events now.
And the ironic piece about this is nobody gets promoted if logistics go well. They get fired if they don't. Right? Which is kind of alarming when you think about it, but nobody notices if registration works well, if there's not a line. But if the moment there is a line, and you're sure as hell hearing about it from your stakeholders, right? So it's a really interesting place, I think, we find ourselves in the industry right now.
It is also what is contributing to a lot of us being absolutely bonkers crazy.
Bonkers.
One more sort of foundational question before we dig into different events is, to you, what is the difference between an event, an experience, or just a moment versus a story worth telling?
Ooh, wow. Start with the easy ones. Why don't you, Chris? Okay, I got to write this down. An event versus an experience. What was the second part?
A moment versus a story worth telling.
Discipline. In the second, I think. Strategy, intention. We often make moments stories that shouldn't necessarily be stories. I think that's actually the easier of the two. Event versus an experience, I would say An event is a bundle of experiences and a bundle of activities, and I think we learned that when we moved to digital during the COVID pivot, and everybody picked up their proprietary customer conference strategy and moved it online with hundreds of breakouts and trade show booths and all those type of things. And the reality is people behave differently digitally than they do in person. And the analogy I've always used with this is when I go to a department store to buy a dress, I might buy a sofa because I'm browsing, I'm walking through the different departments, and I know because it's happened. Ask my husband, he'll gladly tell you. But when I go to Amazon to buy my cat food, I buy my cat food and I am in and out, and I am not browsing to see what catches my eye. And then Amazon opened stores and I was like, that makes no sense to me. And then they realized that actually they don't translate to physical the same way and they close them. So I felt quite validated by that. So we took these bundles of activities and experiences that were put together in the past to be, to basically capitalize on when you had people together, right, in time and space. And then we tried to put them into digital rather than looking at them individually and seeing what of these translate, what of these are important, what of these are important that we bundle together and keep together versus not based on the environment that we're living in. So to me, an experience can be receiving a gift, receiving something in the mail, receiving a letter, receiving a shout out. I don't know what it is, but that can all be part of an experience, but that doesn't make it an event. And on the flip side, you can have an event, but it might not be an experience, right? Like, and I think that's the distinction.
I think that's cool. The bundle of experiences rolling up into one event. That's actually the first time I've heard it described that way. And it's a really good way of thinking about it.
Like those Russian stacking dolls. What are they called? Those little Russian dolls where you
the
take
nesting
one
dolls.
And there's more and more and more. That was actually the image that I used to have on my slides when I was trying to prove this point on a webinar.
That's a cool way of thinking about it because you can have multiple experiences wrapped up into one event. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I've started asking this question is I've been asked many, many times, let's make this more of an experience. When we're in the planning process, a senior leader will come up and say, we need to turn this into an experience. And I always ask them, well, what does that mean? Because it's subjective. There's always someone's perception of what an event or an experience should be is their own. And if we take it to another senior leader for another round of approval, they've got a different point of view. And it got me thinking. I love that you
question that. I was telling last week at our event, one of the best piece of advice I ever received was from one of my former bosses at SAP. I had lots and not all were good, but this one was really great. And he said, listen beyond the ask. They might be asking you for more demo space or their product to be featured or whatever it might be, another session. But what are they really trying to achieve? Because you actually might be able to come up with a much better solution than what they're asking for. So I think you're clarifying of what is an experience and what does that mean to you is the same thing as listening beyond the ask and really trying to understand that.
I have found that many event folks that sit within our field are better listeners than some other marketers, certainly people within other fields, because we're doing exactly that. We listen really, really well, which is a skill that I think once you've gotten a certain number of years or a certain number of events under your belt, you start to hear what actually accomplishes a goal, or at least what the goal is so that we can figure out a way to accomplish it.
I certainly hope so, right? I did a session on measurement because that's something I'm incredibly passionate about and I've built my career on, really. And I did this session last week and I have always believed that measurement starts as step one, not at the end of the process of when we're trying to justify what we're doing. So, understanding what success looks like and then designing, what's the business objective, then what's the event objective. So to your point, if you want to increase revenue, great, but an event cannot do that. An event is a piece of the puzzle that can do that. So how do you translate increase Q2 revenue or whatever that goal might be to an event objective because as we know with events, once we're done, someone else is picking up opportunities, moving them downstream. Like our job is to coordinate that handoff effectively, but we move on to the next event, but we need the business to drive the outcomes for that. So what can the event achieve? And going to that pipeline example, right? If accelerating pipeline is a goal of the event, pretty standard event goal, how can you accelerate it if A, you don't have the right pipeline in the room, and B, you don't have the environment to do it? Those things don't happen accidentally. So how do you get the right pipeline? And all deals are not equal. How do you get 100% of your big deals? How do you design a process to get those in place so that you can get them to the event? And then how do you facilitate that environment? How do you bring your sales stakeholders on? Because we know the chaos that happens at post-event when things go into the sales environment and CRM hygiene and all those type of things. So how do you get everybody on board and design the right experience for success? If you don't know that up front, then how do you deliver an experience or an event that drives business outcomes? So I think the fact that we are becoming much better as an industry and as a discipline of listening, understanding business, thinking about the business of events, and really acting as true partners to our business actually elevates the whole profession at the same time as well.
I think that is very well said. It's pretty neat to see the evolution of where events are coming. So I remember when I was at an event agency ages and ages and ages ago, I was chatting with our general manager, and I was fresh out of school, so I had marketing, fresh on the brain. And I asked her, what do you think our role is in marketing? She told me we need to put out some branded pens and maybe some branded notepads and other examples of the like. It's like, is that what you think marketing is? Is just putting out some branded pens and pads? She had no idea that there is such a strategic framework and approach to making the events that we were supposed to be hosting at this agency actually drive our partners and our clients forward. Exactly. So the understanding of what marketing can be is really broad for a lot of people, and trying to get people to understand that the framework that you just explained, like, is the right audience, are we talking about the right thing in the right way? Those are all pieces of the puzzle. And if you don't have them all right, you're going to lose your audience.
The puzzle has a big gaping hole in the middle, right? And it's not ever going to be done.
Yeah. And establishing some of those expectations early on. People need to know what they're going to get to the value of time that you mentioned at the beginning. If it's a surprise, you're not going to get the right people in the room because they don't know what they're going to be getting in return.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, I don't know if it's like this in your world, but it was in my previous world. The business goals were often put in front of the attendee needs and desires. And if you don't have that right balance, yes, it has to deliver value for the business, or else you shouldn't be doing an event. But if it doesn't deliver value for the attendees, then you're not going to deliver value for the business, right? So finding that right balance between the two and is a skill and an art for sure, and a science.
Definitely not an easy thing to do. I'm curious if you have any examples, and we could use an ELX one, and we could use ones from previous lives, of where you've been able to deliver a great experience. It wasn't just the event, to what we were talking about earlier, but it truly landed on the experience level.
I'm going to use ELX because it's top of mind in the event that we've just come out of. I mean, I have an audience of you, right, of me, and I think every event we do, we learn, we refine, we build upon. We take our feedback very seriously. We listen, we use it, we share it, and we work really hard to continue to evolve our experiences. So last week, we have 112 of our members at this event. We worked hand in hand with our partners at the Venetian and with Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Association. They are both strategic partners, so they knew the expectations as well around this community, and the partners that they brought to the table. And we blew people away. Like, people are still, I mean, the food and beverage experience at the Venetian was incredible, as was the one for the event you were with us in February, right? Like, it was incredible, and they seem to be getting better and better and better and better. It's crazy. But all of the touch points of the combined experiences worked so well to deliver on the experience. And I'll give you an example. Las Vegas is hot as hell in July, right? You cannot do anything outside without, like, I feel like I went outside, my contacts melted to my eyes, and I felt like I'd opened my oven door. Like, it was 110 Fahrenheit in the shade at night. It was hot. So you can't do anything outside. So when you start to think about how do we create experiences that are going to impress our audience who have seen and done everything, in that type of an environment, when you can't go outside, you start to limit some of the things that you can do. And so as we thought about, we always do a seated dinner, and we always do assigned seating at that seated dinner. And it's intentional, because if we don't, people end up sitting with the same 4 people that they texted on the way to the event, and they have a lovely time, but it's exactly the same thing they do at every other event. So we really are intentional about who do we sit with who, how do we build the right chemistry. I want to say it's a science. It's still a painful art, maybe, because I do it personally, and it's probably one of the most time-consuming things I do each year, but it's really important. So we're going to do this sit-down dinner. Where are we going to do this? Where can we wow people that have seen everything before? If I backtrack to our event last year, we were on Wrigley Field. Imagine second base, one long table stretching towards third, one long table stretching towards first. Place cards were customized jerseys with people's names on it. People came out of to the field through the players' dugout. And even if you're not a baseball fan or a Cubs fan, it is such an iconic venue. Like, if you tell people like that you were on Wrigley Field, somebody is impressed, right? And then after that, we had a dessert reception in the players' clubhouse. All of their stuff was still in their lockers. It was amazing. So that's our benchmark for the last event. And we're like, how do we elevate this? How do we exceed this in an environment where it's hot as hell? So we landed up working with the Allegiant Stadium, but I really wanted to make this not another stadium event, because we've just done a stadium, and ELX and stadium events aren't the only things that we can do. So we decided to make it a gala, and we didn't reveal where we were going. It was a black tie gala with a black, silver, and white theme. And people started to guess it, that it was at Raiders Stadium. It never even occurred to me that they would guess it, but we're event people. Like, they figured it out in many cases, but a lot didn't. So they did not know where we were going until we got to the stadium. But if I back up, after the sessions ended, we had a glam suite where people could go, and it was an opportunity for the Venetian to showcase their chairman's suite. And if you haven't seen it, it is the most spectacular suite I have ever seen in my life. I was like, we have to use this some way so people can see it. So we came up with the glam suite so people could get their makeup done, their eyelashes done, their shoes shined, like have a touch up either before they got changed or after. We went on the buses to Allegiant. People found out while we were there. And then we had dinner or cocktail reception in the Wynn Club. Environment matched our theme. It was all black and white. It was great. People still didn't understand what we were doing. Most people probably thought we were going onto the field. We weren't, because AC/DC was setting up. And that would have been more similar to then, even though it's different environments, it's still a field dinner on a stadium. So the Allegiant team came up with the most incredible concept I wish I could take credit for it. I can't. We trusted them. Ashley Hinson is a longtime friend of mine through the industry. And so I trusted her. We trusted them. And what they did was they flew in a Michelin star chef from California, and he and his team created a 5-course dinner and cocktail, wine, mocktail pairings. And the environment was still all black and white. So people went to sit at their seated dinners. The menus were boxes that were shaped like Allegiant Stadium. Like even the menu experience was a whole unboxing experience. They were spectacular. And the food came and it was all black. Like even the food was black to match the theme for course 1. And the entertainment, what was there was, and we were around the torch. If you've ever been to Raiders Stadium, there's this beautiful torch structure. This is where we were within the stadium. And the entertainment was all in black and white, and everyone was like, oh, it's just on theme. Nobody really put 2 and 2 together with the food. The next course, I think the next color was yellow, was introduced. And the yellow was introduced through the food, through the entertainment, and the dancers, and the lighting started to change, and the drink pairing matched that. And then the next color was red, and then blue, and then green. And I mean, it just went on and on. But it was incredible. And some people were like, it didn't occur to me to the last minute that the colors of the entertainment and the food were the same, and you were introducing color. I was like, wow, attention to detail much. But anyway, it was such an incredible experience to sort of to have all of these elements that added up. Then we went outside to this patio, the curtains revealed themselves, and it's a beautiful Las Vegas skyline. Like, it's a beautiful view of the skyline. So we all stood for a group photo, which has kind of become our tradition of what we do. And then the next thing, a drone show happened. And I didn't even know that the drone show was happening. And it was a drone show for us, brought to us by Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Association. And I mean, to see the ELX logo in the sky in drones, I was crying my eyes out. Like, it was just so impactful. And so to me, I know this is such a long-winded story, and I apologize, but it's just such an example of where you can take an environment that is a non-traditional environment and create an experience that nobody would expect in it. It was pretty impactful.
Man, that is so cool. There are so many different pieces of that are so interesting. Certainly adds to the FOMO that I wish I had been there. But the attention to detail to every single step, I think, is absolutely spectacular, and something that you really need the understanding of your audience and the time to pull together an experience that is going to resonate with each of them. Even if they're realizing it by the last course, at least they realized it, because then all of a sudden you start thinking about, holy cow, not only was every plate, but every artist, but the lighting, the entire environment changing around it. You start to appreciate the fact that not only did one person come up with this, an entire team and multiple teams are acting around it and making this come to life.
Yeah, for them, right? Because they're the people that are designing experiences. You know it, I know it, like designing experiences for other people. We're always the ones behind the scenes. So to be able to flip that narrative and provide that experience for our members was really impactful for them, and really impactful for us, and really impactful for our partners as well.
The unexpected, I do believe, is a big component of it, because Allegiant Stadium is a beautiful venue by itself. Had everyone gone down onto the field had AC/DC not been moving in, I think everyone would have been absolutely thrilled. But to use a beautiful place unconventionally and surprise people, I've talked about this in some previous recordings, that surprise moment does make for a richer or stickier experience. And when you can kind of catch people off guard, obviously in a positive way, it really gets people present
It
really
is.
involved in the moment.
But there's a fine line, right? Like a really good friend of mine runs Club Ichi. I don't know if you've heard about them, but they did. It's a sort of a more of a social club where I call us the business club for leaders. They're a social club for everybody, but in the event space, and they do incredible work. They had a secret family They called it secret family vacation or reunion or whatever. They've done it once before, where everybody went to a location and they were packed for a week and they didn't know where they were going. That
Wow.
to me would be I just couldn't do it. Like that's too much lack of control for me. So but everybody who signed up for this, of course, signed up for this, and they knew what they were getting into, and they went to New Zealand. I mean, oh my gosh, I am so jealous. I probably would have signed up myself if I knew they were going to New Zealand, but that's beside the point. But there's also a comfort level of surprise that you have to be careful around as well, especially with us in the events profession, because we're all control freaks. We have to be control
Yeah,
freaks. And so how much surprise and delight do you bring in depends on your audience as well.
I completely agree. I also had a thought as you were describing your assignment of the seating at the dinners. My grandmother, and this is something I've adhered to, for any sort of family dinner, you had 1 year after you were married that you were allowed to sit next to your new wife. After that, you never sat next to them ever again at any future family dinner,
I
so
love
that the
that idea.
family would always have someone new, even though we're all family, to sit next to, the people that you don't live with and see every day. And we've adhered to
Exactly.
that in every family dinner to accomplish the
Sometimes
same end that
I
you're
mean
talking about.
it's family, so you may not like the drunk uncle that you get put beside, but whatever. But with us, like I said, we evolve everything every time. So now with AI, the seating charts have gotten a little bit easier, but it is still very manual. But I upload our final seating list from every event, so we have a running history of who was sat beside each other. So I still, not only do I know people who were friends or who hang out separately or whatever, I also have seating charts. So from the dinner you were at in February, all of that is in the tool. So if you came, you would not be sitting beside the same person that you sat beside in February when you're at the event. And sometimes like I said, it does backfire if you put someone really outgoing with really someone that's very introverted together. Sometimes it maybe doesn't make for the best conversation, but sometimes it's created beautiful friendships as well, where these people might not have even ever met.
That is a tool that I believe all of the members and anyone in the event world would probably benefit from.
Mhm.
You could probably package that up and
Well,
monetize
it's
it.
called my friend Claude.
Yeah. Do you think in the creation of experiences, well, let me rephrase this. Uh, do you think you need high dollar events to create positive experiences?
No, I don't. Sometimes that backfires. I mean, our events are ridiculously over the top because this is our partners' opportunities to showcase what they can do. But when we go to town and we take members out for a dinner, we're not doing the same thing for the Michelin star chef that we've flown in for multi-course, multi-entertainment dinner. It's an experience of bringing people together. As long as you can understand what adds value and you can design an experience for that, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
I agree. What do you think is the benefit of the physical proximity? What is it about us bringing people together in person that changes things?
Obviously, trust, right? Everything is synthetic right now, and so to be able to establish trust, but most importantly, establish relationships, right? And to have these random moments. Like I've been looking at our post-event survey, and we asked the workshops versus the break sessions versus the meals, and I don't know if I should be offended or happy, but the things that scored the highest in value to people were actually the conversations over lunch at meals and between sessions. Now, what we did facilitated that, right? We did a lot of things, and one of the things we're working on, and we sort of beta tested it. We didn't fully develop it, but I think it's got legs. Is when we think about the events profession as a whole, it's, we've got this, I call it a continuum. On one side are event and experiential marketers, loosely responsible for brand and demand and making the machine produce more. Me, that's our background. In the middle, we've got centralized event services functions that are servicing the enterprise, and they're really looking to support their budget holders and their stakeholders with efficient delivery and scalable delivery and to drive their business outcomes. In fact, I think that's one of the harder, because you're not as close to the business and you really don't have the ability sometimes to get to the beyond the ask, and because you're not as deep into the business. And then on the far side are the procurement and strategic meetings management folks that are really looking for visibility and governance and risk mitigation, right? So their job is to protect the machine, deliver the machine, grow the machine, if you think about the three. And it's not binary. People sit across all. But even that, if you think about it on the event marketing side, when you have people that you could have one person that's responsible for, they both have $25 million budgets, but one person's responsible for 5 high value, high touch things. Whereas another one has a fully distributed team of field marketers that are doing hundreds of events for the same budget, maybe even thousands of events all over the world. Same point on the continuum, completely different realities. So one of the things that we worked on and will continue to work on, and I'm hoping that this is part of why those conversations were so powerful, is we matched people into cohorts, and we had cohort letters on their badges. And so if you had an A and I had an A, you would know that we have something in common. Now, we've got a lot of opportunity to build on this. It was just sort of a beta test. But those are the type of things that we're doing to facilitate the conversations in our world, to help you find the people that can add the most value. And I mean, it's great to make friends. I always used to say when I was at SAP, I'm like, I'm a marketer. I'm sure the IT folks are great to have a beer with, but they're not why I go to an event, right? Same thing with us in our community. We want to help you find people, even though you're all heads of events, we want to help you find people like you living the same reality. I personally wonder, and I hope maybe part of that, what the effort we put into creating those connections and were what added to the value, because you could sit down and go, wait, you're an A, I'm an A, why? But yeah, so those random moments, those hallway conversations, those moments of serendipity cannot be replicated in any other way other than an event, I don't think. Not at any scale anyway.
It's the same thing I feel like when I go into the office, into a busy office, because if I go into the office and there's no one there, that certainly doesn't help. But all of the conversations in between meetings are actually the ones that are moving a project forward, moving the business
when you
forward.
Can just stick your head up and over the partition of the desks and say, what about this? What about that? But
quick question.
Yeah. Other people need to be in the office in order to make that work, or you need to be able to interact. Because I don't know about you, but in my former life, I would spend my entire day on conference calls. So I'd go into the office and lock myself in a room because I was on conference calls all day, which defeated the whole object of those moments.
I still have lots and lots of those days, and they drive me nuts.
Yeah. Which is also something, for event attendees that we have to remember as event professionals that are designing experiences is post-COVID, the speed of business has increased so substantially. So the other analogy that I used to use, and I didn't say it earlier when I was talking about the bundles of activities that form an event, and the second piece of that was to hold people hostage. Because we used to do that a lot, and many of us did in our events. We thought we owned their time because they were at the event with us. That is not the case. We never own anyone's time. So how do we give people the mental space to A, be present, but B, not worry that the world is blowing up around them, especially when we've asked them to be away from their personal lives and their families and everything else as well. And that's a bit of an art that I think we're all learning as an industry. There's a fine line. You can't say, okay, here, have half your day for a conference call, because that defeats the object of them being at an event. So there's a fine line balance, but I think it's something we all have to remember.
I do think people are coming around on the breathing room at these events. It's something that I do recommend quite a lot, and don't always win those arguments, but we are starting to get a more opportunity for people to, whether it be breathing room to go check in on your day-to-day or your families, or just the breathing room to have those conversations. It's not just programming down your throat from 8 to 5.
Yeah. Hurry up, get back into general session. I don't care if you're having a great conversation. General sessions, we've all been where those people are dinging.
With the chime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think experience has changed? It's certainly changed since COVID. But do you think experience has changed in the last 20 years, 30 years, longer?
Interesting question. I think probably the definition of an experience might have changed. But experiences have always been important throughout history. I think we probably, certainly are my audience, all of us, but yeah, I'm gonna change my mind. I do think experiences have changed, because there is if you get my time, you need to earn my time, and you need to keep earning my time, because I can be on my phone looking at other people having a great time, and that's not an experience for me. So there are not so many other things competing for attention. I do think that the focus and the attention we put on experience has changed, and also our individual definitions of experience have changed.
That is definitely true. The value for the time and the earning our time is absolutely valid. Absolutely, technology has changed around events. I feel thankful that, at least when I first started, the phones, social media, all of that were not a huge factor or a huge distraction into a program. So there's a little bit more presence. And now that presence needs to be orchestrated into the events. But as long as you can drive that presence, I feel like once you are present, that perhaps has not changed as much. But you have to get there. It's not a guarantee that people are going to be present at your programs.
Yeah. And you're competing against perceptions of experience, right? We know that Instagram and many of those things we see online are not necessarily real, but people are measuring experiences against those perceptions as well.
That is a conversation I'm going to have with my daughters about the perception of what life looks like online and what's real.
Yes. And you will have it over and over
and over again,
my friend.
Definitely. We mentioned friction at the top of the call. I'd love to dig into, what do you feel is friction for events, and is there such a thing as positive friction?
So start with, is there friction? What is friction? I think we have gotten, as an industry, stuck in our way of doing things. I always say the most dangerous words in the English language are, we've always done it this way. And it's even more true in the event space. I mean, if you think about the check-in experience that I was talking about, right? Like, how many of us have ever questioned that it has to be done that way?
It's rare. Yeah.
Right? There's so many different things. And I always try, because my audience is so demanding, I always try to put myself in their shoes and how they would feel. And so I'll just give you another example from the event that you were at in February. As you know, we do a new members reception, and one of our new members literally had joined the community the week prior. She knew nobody. She knew nothing about us. She'd not been on one call, so she didn't get a sense of who the ELX team was. And she walked in the room into the first timers reception, and she had a lovely time. She had a lovely time at the event. She came back this event, which was a good sign. But she said to us, then we had a first time, we do new members onboarding calls every month. I make a lot of decisions based on what I would want, and I wouldn't want to join a community and think I was the only new person. So we're talking about the new members onboarding call. And I said to her, I said, would you mind sharing your experience at the event? And she said to me, she said, I was so in my head and so scared to go. I had massive imposter syndrome. We all have imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome. I'm sure you have imposter syndrome. Like we all do. And she said, I was so scared and so overthinking it. And I was like, I never want anybody to feel like that at my events. So this year we had, when people were first timers, we knew we'd set up in our registration process that we could flag if someone was a first timer. We asked in their registration, so we personalized registration and customized it. We asked them, would you consent to being added to a first timer group chat? And so we'd gotten their consent early on. We did a first timers call where we walked through I explained why we were doing this. We walked through what to expect. 50% of the room is new. Knowing that going in is game changing, because you're not the only one walking into a room that doesn't know anyone. We had this WhatsApp group for people to meet each other. We went from the first timer reception. We all walked together to the opening session. So by the time they got to that opening session, they had friends. It's kind of like that whole, go back to high school. You don't know where you're going to sit for lunch and you're wandering around hoping someone's going to invite you to sit at their table. No one will ever feel like that at my events. So that was sort of what we were trying to avoid. And so going back, this really long-winded answer, which is a common theme in our conversation, but going back to what the question you asked is, we just have to put the intention into the experiences and think, where is friction? Where is good friction points? Or where are friction points that can be fixed? Not all can. And, if our group was 2,000 people, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did, but it wasn't. So we were able to fix them. So I think we just need to reevaluate what we've always done and put ourselves in the shoes of the attendees. Same as simple thing. I think I mentioned it earlier. There was a welcome letter telling them that they didn't need a notebook, where to be and when, because all of a sudden now you've got to get your phone to go out and see where you're supposed to be at what time. Let's make things easy for people. So those are examples of friction, and we have lots of them in events because we have been doing a lot of the same things for a long time. We've taken broken processes and added new technology to broken processes, which is now expensive broken processes, so lots of opportunities for that. Is there such a good thing as good friction? Don't know. I don't think so. There might be necessary friction, but I don't know that there's such a good thing as good friction. If something can be removed, then why is it there?
That's a good point. I do feel like in our industry where we are entirely dependent on people and the fact that human beings are the core component of our business, you're always going to have friction because every person is different. And every person's thoughts of what they are doing are different than how they are perceiving their own reality. So you're dealing with both people attending a program, how they're thinking. I think your high school example is a really good one, because I distinctly remember my first day at high school doing exactly what you just described, of trying to figure out, where am I just going to sit so I can eat my lunch? Hopefully I can sit with someone, and maybe I can just sit alone and not be bothered by anybody. But that same thing happens when you're 14, happens when you're 44. It's the exact same thing. And trying to remember that we are dealing with people, and people are wildly unpredictable, and trying to think through every possible situation to both make them comfortable, move them around, get them to listen, get them to be present, is what makes our job extraordinarily difficult and provides that friction. You're always trying to figure out what is going to work best for a large group of people.
And it doesn't also, sorry to interrupt, but it doesn't have to be expensive. It just takes intention and thought.
The friction piece is an interesting component as I was pulling together the questions for these. They're all about optimizing events. What is the best way to do things? What is the right way to do things? And I think one of the best skills that anyone in our industry has is dealing with friction, dealing with adversity, dealing with change, rolling with the punches. So I wanted to make sure that as we discuss what an experience can be, what are the hard parts? Because I feel like that's something that we rarely chat about, is how well people that host experiences for a living deal with change, deal with optimizing a situation, compromising multiple different points of view. I was chatting with Charlotte Peterson a number of weeks ago on one of these recordings, and we were talking about how we are master compromisers, trying to pull together the different points of view, what are the multiple goals, and then optimize all of that into one experience.
It's a negotiation, not an agreement in many cases.
Yeah. We were trying to determine what's more difficult, trying to drive consensus between senior leaders or negotiating with your children. And I think we both agreed that negotiating with your children can be harder.
I don't know. Mine are older now, so maybe I'm on the other side of it. And so, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train. Mine are in college, so it's a little bit different. But with your children, you're the boss. They may not think you are, but you are, and they're alive because of you. With your stakeholders, you're not the boss, and they're very well aware of that too, right? Like, so that's a challenge. Oh, I think you either thrive in this industry or you don't stay in this industry. Like, we all need to look cool as a cucumber on top, but like we're ducks paddling underwater, and that's you have to thrive in that environment, or you will crumble under the pressure, for sure. I was actually when I studied hospitality at school because I wanted to get paid to travel. Once I graduated university, somehow I talked myself into this sales secretary job at a hotel, which was ironic because I didn't know how to type. But anyway, apparently I had the gift of the gab back then as well. So I got this job as a sales secretary, and within sort of the whole back of the house, there were like 8 to 10, I don't even know how many there were, values, corporate values, that we as employees were supposed to live by. And executives would stop you all the time and ask you to name one of the values because they really wanted to make sure that we internalize them. So it didn't take me very long in my lazy 22-year-old self to realize that I only needed to know one, because nobody was going to remember what I'd said to them last time, nor were they going to go into a boardroom and compare notes. What did Nicola say to you? Oh, she said the same to me. She's lazy. So I picked accept change as a positive force to memorize, which is so funny now as I think about it, because little did I know that that would be such an important part of my career, whether it's been my personal careers or and the job changes I've had, and the different paths that my career has taken to the events that we're running and all of the stuff that goes wrong with them, and something always does, right? And so it's kind of funny that my laziness picked that, but we have to. But I also think we have a tendency, going back to my most dangerous words in the English language, is to hold on to things for too long as well. And as a profession, that's where we need to challenge ourselves more.
I couldn't agree more. I do feel like holding on to those old ways of doing things, even if it takes a lot of effort, is actually a form of laziness, because you're not challenging an old way of doing things.
Perfect example. I was at an event from my former employer, and they had changed their registration process, and there was a line through the entire convention center of people waiting to go to pick up their name badges, and it was 15 minutes before the general session was supposed to open, and you needed your badge to get in. And I remember calling someone that had used to work for me. I had left the organization, and I was like, I am sure, I don't need to tell you this, but there's a really long lineup. And she said, yeah, it's no different of a wait than it was in previous years. It just looks longer because they're all spread out. And I've never forgotten that, because that is sort of the mindset many of our teams get stuck into. And our job as leaders is to say to them, just because it always happened doesn't mean it's okay to keep it happening. And in fact, perception's reality. And this looks 10 times worse than anything ever in the past. But sort of that, well, it's no different. It's okay. Like sort of that defensiveness, that's dangerous in our industry, I really think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My last formal question for you, and then we can certainly touch on anything else that may come to mind, is what can people learn from you? What can people learn from your experience? What can people learn from this conversation?
You know, I learn from everybody too, right? It's not like I have all of the answers. In fact, I just recorded a podcast a little while back, and I was like, some of the best ideas I have had and I've implemented into our events are ones I've stolen from other events. So, for example, that name badge, room key, note on where to be was at the Unreasonable Hospitality Summit. That came from there. The WhatsApp group, that came from when I went to TED. The changing the registration and check-in environment, also from when I went to TED. So I think we need to learn from other events. We need to be event attendees, all of us, in order to learn. And in fact, it's not just even in any profession. The day you stop learning and the day you stop being open to learning, I think it's time for you to leave the profession, because we never will all have the answers. So my recommendation, or what I hope I can leave with everybody, is just take inspiration from wherever you can take inspiration. It might be your check-in experience at the airport, or not, most often not, or when you're going through European entry system. If anyone's been through that, I'm like, these people need event professionals. Have they not heard of signage? Like, hello, people movers, it would be so much better. But anyway, I digress. But learn from what works and what doesn't work in places, and then apply it. Just be willing to be flexible.
Those are good examples. I do think it's fascinating to see where you can draw inspiration from, just in general, because quite often the inspiration that I find is completely outside of the event world.
Yeah.
You can find it in a retail experience. You can find it online. You can find it with someone talking about, frankly, any topic. But that experience, or sorry, that inspiration, you kind of have to be open to it first. You have to be looking at the world in a manner in which you're ready to receive that sort of inspiration. And it's not always on. Sometimes I find that I'm in a much more willingness to be inspired frame of mind than others. And at that point, I start seeing it kind of everywhere.
The other thing I would say is, don't ask questions in your survey if you're not going to use them. Be willing to take the feedback. Like, as we have a 91 NPS right now for our event. The industry average, I don't know, is like a 34 or something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is incredible. But every little bit there's a lot of feedback in there and a lot of advice. And every comment of something that, we all have a lot of opinions. Like, people have a lot of opinion on name badges. That's one that is just the bane of my existence and will always be. It's so easy to get defensive with feedback, and you have to take it for what it is. And so here I am, I'm reading these surveys and I'm like, oh, I feel like I've been punched in the stomach. We have a 91 NPS, for God's sake. Like, what is my problem? Why am I hyper focused on someone's score that was not the greatest score? One person, you know what I mean? So I just think we have to be open to feedback, and we have to use feedback.
I do feel like we all get personally attached to our events, which is why that feedback physically hurts. And
Yeah.
I feel that on every single program. It's as if you need to take a little bit of time to separate yourself from it so you can look back at it objectively.
Yeah.
Because looking at your feedback while you're still on site, tearing down, is really rough.
Yeah. Yeah. We had this conversation on last Thursday. We had, the hotel was really kind, and they gave us a cabana and a pool, and like, one of our founders, he's like, have you looked at the survey feedback? And I'm like, no, and I don't intend to.
Don't do it.
And if you look at it, I don't care, but I don't want to hear it. Like, let me live in my bubble for a day, please. So you're totally right. There's a time and a place for everything.
That's so funny. Is there anything that we may not have hit on in the experience realm before we wind down?
I don't think so. I mean, wow, we've talked about a lot of stuff. We've covered a lot of stuff. I just, I don't think so. I think we covered it all.
I think
No,
this
I'll
is
probably
great.
hang up and go, shoot, we should have
Yeah,
talked about that.
it's always the
And
case.
that's a different conversation. Thank you for letting me do this.
Thank you for joining. You have absolutely incredible insight. You articulate all of your commentary so, so well. You're such a great champion of events and experiences for all of us, for everyone that is a member for Events as a Field. I'm really happy that we could do this.
Me too. Thank you.